Hello, I'm Gepwin, and this is what I call Gepwin Says, where I take a little time out each week to just ramble on about something that's interesting me or that I've been thinking about. And it seems like some of you are enjoying it, so I'm going to keep doing it. Tune in every Wednesday to hear me rant about things. Anyway, this week I saw a little thing that they are making a new Prince of Persia game, which I think is amazing. But it got me thinking about the old Prince of Persia games, which Sands of Time and the Sands of Time trilogy. Now there's four of them, but that one doesn't really count because it's kind of a movie tie-in, um, which is also what I want to talk about is the movies. But that's one of the best series of games that I've ever played. Um, I've heard some people say, and I agree with them, that taken together, they may possibly be the best video games of all time, even though each one individually has some problems. That also got me thinking, as I said, about the Prince of Persia movie. And that got me thinking about video game movies in general. So this week, I'm going to talk about why they cannot make a decent video game movie to save their lives. And more specifically, I'm going to look at the Prince of Persia movie because that movie very much encapsulates what I want to talk about and what the idea I've been having is. So, this is going to contain spoilers for Prince of Persia Sands of Time, both the video game and the movie, and possibly some other games in the Prince of Persia series, though I'm not sure. So, spoiler warning if you have not played the Prince of Persia trilogy, go find it. So, to start off, let's talk about the first Prince of Persia Sands of Time game. It's not the first game, it was the first game in a reboot series that came out in the 90s. But let's talk about the opening to that. I'm going to put it up on screen and we can watch it.
Most people think time is like a river that flows swift and sure in one direction. But I have seen the face of time, and I can tell you, they are wrong. Time is an ocean in a storm. You may wonder who I am and why I say this. Sit down, and I will tell you a tale like none that you have ever heard.
Now that is probably the greatest opening I've seen for a video game in my life, especially for something that is going to be apparently story-driven. We can dissect it a little bit. The first words are about time. Time is one of the constants in the universe. Time is the ever-driving force that makes everything go forward, that will lead us eventually to old age and death. Time is something that we all know, and we all know very intimately, and he is telling us that we don't know how it works. This is a very, very strong opening narration to a game. Just the weird visuals and that very strong narration going over, telling us that we don't know something that we think we know. I am intrigued by that. I think that is interesting. I love time travel stories, and I love this idea that he's going to tell us whatever adventure that he's been on. And since it's a video game, I really love the idea that I'm going to get to play through whatever time-bending hijinks are going to be happening. Also, this intro is so kind of vague and shows you so many strong visuals. It just gives you so many interesting questions, like, who is this guy? Is this the person that's talking to us? Because it seems like it, but we don't know yet. Who's this woman they keep showing? What the heck is she doing? Why is she upset? And to a lesser extent, why is it raining? Because we know this is a game set in Persia, which is kind of hot. But overall, it's just a very, very strong opening. It sets the tone for the game very, very well. Now, by contrast, let's talk about the Prince of Persia Sands of Time movie opening, which, try as I might and look as many unscrupulous corners of the internet as I did, I wasn't able to find a decent one to show you, and it would probably get me a copyright infringement anyway, so I'm not going to be able to show you the actual intro for the movie. But suffice it to say, it has some kind of weird little some kind of nice landscape shot, some weird sort of BS talk about destiny and how two lives can be intertangled across time, and then it goes directly into a free-running segment with a small child who is supposedly the Prince of Persia after he is adopted, bringing this whole kind of low-born street urchin goes to high office element to the story that's barely touched on again. And that's really most of it. They bring in some other stuff later that we'll talk about, but that's really the whole intro. Some BS about destiny and things, and that is when the movie started going downhill for me. There's the thing. I had really, really high hopes for that movie because if you're gonna make a movie out of a video game, then Prince of Persia: Sands of Time is such an incredible candidate to do it. And the movie messed it up. I sat in the theater and the credits rolled and all the like pre-credits rolled and all the things came up and all in my heart, all I wanted to hear was most people think time is like a river, and that would have made the whole movie for me. Just take the intro we just watched and put it in the front of the movie. You don't even have to keep the visuals, just the dialogue, and that would have set a better tone for the movie. And they didn't do that. And they didn't do that because they wanted to change the story, because they didn't think we could handle the story, even though it's a video game and they're basing the video game off. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of my point. Let's go move on to the actual story of the Prince of Persia game. In this game, you are set as the prince. You never know his name in these games. He's always just the prince. And you accidentally let loose a army of sand zombies, basically. You get this fancy magic knife that lets you control time to a certain extent. And you use it to unlock a giant hourglass that is filled with the sands of time. And this hourglass kills and destroys the entire kingdom, including your father, all of your friends, your courtiers, everyone you know is now turned into this sort of Sam zombie thing by your hand, and you feel that you need to go, well, first you need to survive and figure out what's going on, and then you need to fix it. And the only other person who survived this is Farah, I believe is how they pronounce her name. It's Farah, so I'm not sure how to pronounce this. An Indian princess, not random white girl, I forget what her name is, but an Indian princess whom your family has captured as a kind of war prize. So suffice it to say, she probably does not have strong positive feelings towards you at this point. And that is the setting for this story. It's more or less a post-apocalypse survivor game, but with time-controlling elements and this nice Persian feel. It never goes into like quite the whole zombie apocalypse era, but you're running through a deserted castle that's sort of crumbling. It's being destroyed by mystical forces and is filled with these sand monsters. And the entire game is you as the prince and this Indian princess that you captured and hates you. You have to reconcile your differences. You have to work together. You have to become friends and overcome the hatred that you have for each other, because she doesn't like him because he is stuck-up noble who just raided her country. And he doesn't like her because she thinks he's a stuck-up noble, and he is a stuck-up noble. This is a great character progression for the prince during this game. He starts as a stuck-up sort of noble kid who thinks he can do no wrong. Then his hubris brings him down, and he has to redeem himself through the end of the story. And that's all that the movie needed to do. Right? The movie has the prince and his two brothers in this big adventure, and this thing about how he is a low-born kid who can become the king because he's meant for greater destiny things, and whatever girl is supposed to be the guardian of the dagger in some sort of weird mystic way, and it holds secret society and the assassins, and I'm pretty sure they called them sand assassins, even though I can't really remember, but it was ridiculous. And riding an ostrich. This didn't have to be an action movie. Alright, the game has action and puzzle solving as part of it, but the story is a drama. The story is pure drama. Alright? It's a post-apocalyptic survival story. These people are thrown into a terrible situation, and they are very probably the last two people left on Earth. And they have to deal with that while trying to survive in this situation. And it brings them very close together. It forges a friendship that eventually becomes a love interest. And it's just this amazing character arc that these two go through. And I expected that to be the movie. I expected the movie to just be those two characters. Those two characters going through this character arc together. That would have made an incredible movie. But no, it wouldn't have been an action enough movie. It wouldn't have been enough of a Disney movie. And that's the big mistake. That's why they can't make a decent video game movie. Because they don't respect the material and they don't respect their audience. Alright, if you could take a game that's story is a very, very well done two-person character drama and turn it into whatever kind of generic crappy Disney action movie, that's just not respecting your source material, and it's not respecting the people you're making the movie for, because who would go see a video game movie? It's people who play and like the video games. Alright, nobody who's never heard of Prince of Persia is going to be really excited for a Prince of Persia movie. It's people who enjoyed the game, so why make it so different from the plot of the game? Why think that people who played and enjoyed that game wouldn't be able to take that game as a movie? Alright, now this is the thing. The most successful, and I think still one of the best video game-based movies, was Tomb Raider. And it's not a particularly good movie, but it knew what it was doing. Alright, Tomb Raider is a game about a woman with large breasts shooting things, and that's what the movie gave us, and that was really all it needed to do. That was a movie that understood its source material. And I think it worked because its source material was inherently juvenile, and it stuck with that. Instead of taking games with large overarching themes, interesting characters, and fun things going on, and making them into juvenile adolescent bait for the movies. Alright, now, the final thing that I want to talk about is to completely spoil the ending of the game, and then contrast it with the ending of the movie, because it's really just terrible. The ending of Prince of Persia: Sands of Time makes me cry every time I see it. I'm certainly not ashamed to admit that. People keep talking about making a video game that can make you cry, and I think that they haven't been playing the right video games. Because I've seen some intense stories, I've seen some very intense moments in games, and I know it can be done. So this is a huge spoiler for anyone who hasn't played the game. Skip past this bit. If you like, I'll try to put a end spoiler thing up or something so you know where to go. So throughout the course of the Sands of Time, the prince and Farah go from hating each other to actually by the end of the game they are falling in love, and there's a good expectation that they will continue this relationship once they have finally saved the world. In the last fight, there is a huge amount of damage done to Time and the castle and everything, and it turns out that the only way to undo what happened is to use the Sands of Time to turn time back to the point before the hourglass was used. Alright, so the prince is the only one who can do this because he's got the knife. So if he turns back time, Farah will have no memory of what just happened. The prince will be the only person in the world who remembers what just happened. So he has to do this in order to save the world, but it means losing his love, and it means losing his love in a terrible, terrible way because she's still there. Right, it's not like she dies, which would be terrible. It's not like she leaves him, which would be terrible, but less so than her dying, obviously. But it's like they never met. He has a memory of this hugely intense experience, going through it with someone, probably the only person left alive in the world, and the other person has no memory that it ever happened or that he exists. And that's just one of the saddest things I've ever seen in a game. And the movie did something like that, but I don't know, the end of the movie, they're going off to getting married and they joke around with each other and have this sort of vague smile like, oh, maybe she remembers what's going on, let's go off into the sunset. In the game, the prince tries to steal a kiss from her. She gets incredibly offended, and he uses the dagger to turn time back for before that happened. He had to leave, and then in the last second when he's leaving, he uses his nickname for her, which I can't remember, and she covers her hands. I think it's something that one of her parents told her, and she suddenly realizes that this weird story he just told her might actually be true, and he leaves. So it's just this, I don't know, it's this kind of horrible, heart-wrenching ending to a very dark two-person drama story that you just played through. If the movie had done even one of those things, it would have been great. But no, the movie thought that people needed a generic action movie with parkour and ostrich racing. And I think until movie studios can actually recognize and respect the material they're working with, we're never going to get a good video game movie. Alright, I think it's a very similar problem to what they had with the comic book movies a few years ago before all the good ones started coming out. Now, I know they're coming out with a few. They're coming out with like Mass Effect and some of the other big games, and I kind of hope they work out, but if movie studios can't deal with the game as simple as Prince of Persia, right? It's very difficult to write a two-person drama, but this game is very obviously a two-person drama. If they can't take that and translate it into a good drama movie, I'm very worried with something they're going to do with a story as complicated as Mass Effect. I don't know, I hope that I'm proven wrong by this, but I just don't see it happening. Anyway, that is my opinion on why they can't make a very good game movie. It is simply compare and contrast the Prince of Persia Sands of Time game to the Prince of Persia Sands of Time movie. Go do it yourself if you like. It's a fairly short game and a fairly drab movie, so it shouldn't take you more than a day or two. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter. You can subscribe to my channel if you like hearing me rant about things and watch me play video games. And you can tune in tomorrow for Kerbal Fuel Crisis, which I know is why 90% of you are here. So yes, that's coming out tomorrow. You don't have very long to wait. I'm Gepwin. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.
Take this. Return it to your father's treasure vault. Guard it well.
I owe you thanks. But why did you invent such a fantastic story? Do you think me a child, that I would believe such nonsense? I said I owe you thanks. You presume too much. Such a fantastic story. Do you think me a child, that I would believe such nonsense?
You're right. It was just a story.
Wait! I don't even know your name.
Just call me Kakolukia.